Chinese widow and her kids had nowhere to go on Christmas, until a lone rancher opened his home and heart. Declan Thorne set the table for one. The ritual was a punishment he had inflicted upon himself for 6 long years, a silent penance in a house that had once vibrated with life. The same chip plate, the same heavy silver fork, and the same suffocating silence that had swallowed him whole since the winter of 1881. Outside, the Montana wind howled like a wounded animal, driving snow against the hewn logs of the ranch house. It was Christmas Eve, a time for miracles and families, but for Declan, it was just another night to remember what he had lost. The kitchen smelled of roasted venison and sourdough bread, a scent that mocked the emptiness of the room. He always cooked too much, his hands remembering a time when there were 4 mouths to feed, not one. He pulled out his chair at the head of the table, leaving the other 3 tucked tightly against the wood, gathering dust in the gloom. He bowed his head, muttering a grace he no longer believed in, when 3 sharp raps on the heavy oak door split the air like gunshot cracks. Declan froze. No one came out this far, certainly not in a blizzard that could freeze a man's blood in minutes. The town of Redemption had learned years ago to leave the bitter ex-marshal alone. He gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles turning white. Go away, he thought. I have nothing for you. Then came the sound that shattered his resolve, a child's cry. It was thin, desperate, and cutting through the storm's roar. Before his mind could protest, Declan's body moved. He crossed the floorboards and threw the latch. The wind hit him first, a physical blow of ice and snow, blinding him momentarily. When his vision cleared, he saw them. A woman stood on his porch, her frame slight and trembling violently under a threadbare coat that offered no defense against the winter. She was Chinese, her raven hair plastered to her face by the wet snow, her almond-shaped eyes wide with a terror that went deeper than the cold. Clinging to her were 3 children. The eldest girl, perhaps 12, stood defiant against the wind, shielding a younger sister. The littlest one was buried in the folds of the woman's skirt, sobbing. Please, the woman said, her voice cracking over the gale. My children. We saw your light. Declan knew the look in her eyes. It was the look of a creature that had run until its heart was about to burst. He stepped back, the instinct to protect warring with the urge to slam the door on the world. Get inside, he barked, his voice rusty from disuse. Before the lot of you freeze. They tumbled into the warmth of the kitchen, bringing a gust of snow with them. As Declan shoved the door shut against the storm, the silence of his house was replaced by the heavy, ragged breathing of strangers. The woman huddled her children close, rubbing their arms with frantic hands. Thank you, she whispered, shivering so hard her teeth rattled. Our wagon lost a wheel 3 miles back. We have been walking for hours. Declan looked at them. The woman was gaunt, her cheekbones sharp, speaking of long-term hunger. The children looked no better. The youngest, a girl no older than 4, peeked out from behind her mother's legs. When she looked up at Declan, his breath hitched in his throat. She had dark, soulful eyes that held the same spark of innocent curiosity his own son, Jacob, had possessed. Sit, Declan commanded, pointing to the table. There's food. They moved hesitantly, like frightened deer. The woman ushered her girls to the chairs that hadn't been touched in years. The wood creaked, a sound that seemed to scream in the quiet room. Declan plated the venison and bread, placing it before them. The middle girl reached for the bread, then paused, looking at her mother. The woman nodded, tears spilling onto her cheeks. They ate with a desperation that twisted Declan's gut. He stood by the stove, watching, his arms crossed over his chest to hold himself together. I am my Lynn, the woman said after the edge of their hunger had been dulled. These are my daughters. Jade, Pearl, and Ruby. Declan nodded stiffly. Declan Thorne. You live here alone, Mr. Thorne? Mylin asked, her gaze darting to the empty hallway. I do. You have a family somewhere. Dead, Declan said, the word landing heavy and flat. Wife and 2 boys. 6 years ago. Mylin lowered her eyes. I am sorry. My husband. Wei. The fever took him in the spring. We have been traveling since. Jade, the eldest girl, looked up from her plate. Her eyes were hard, assessing him with a suspicion far too old for her face. Where were you going? Declan asked. To the mining camps in the north, My Lin said, her voice trembling. I was told there was work for a laundress. But the snow came early. You'd never make it, Declan said bluntly. Not in this wagon, not in this weather. You stay here tonight. Barn's full of hay for your horses if you left them tied up on the road, but I'll fetch them in the morning if they're still alive. Tonight, you sleep here. Jade spoke up, her voice sharp. We don't need charity. Jade, My Lin warned softly. It ain't charity, Declan said, meeting the girl's defiant gaze. It's surviving. You go back out there, you die. It's Christmas Eve. I ain't having for ghosts on my conscience. He led them upstairs. The rooms were cold, preserved in time like a museum of grief. He opened the door to what used to be the boys' room. 2 beds in here. The little ones can share, he pointed across the hall. Guest room for you, As My Lin settled the girls, little Ruby walked up to Declan. She reached out a tiny hand and touched the rough denim of his jeans. Are you a giant? She asked. Declan looked down, startled. No, little miss. Just a man. You look like a giant. Are you sad? Ruby. My Lin gasped, rushing to pull her daughter back. Forgive her, please. It's fine, Declan rumbled. He looked at the child. Yeah. I reckon I am. Ruby nodded solemnly. Me too. My papa went to sleep and didn't wake up. But Mama says he's watching the moon. Declan felt a crack in the ice that encased his heart. Maybe he is. That night, Declan sat by the fire, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of life above him. Floorboards creaking, soft murmurs, the rustle of bedding. He touched the wedding band he wore on a chain around his neck. Sarah. Jacob. Toby. For 6 years, he had pushed the world away to keep their memories safe, untainted by new life. Now, for strangers were sleeping under his roof, and the house felt different. It felt warmer. The storm raged for 3 days. By Christmas morning, the snow had piled halfway up the windows, sealing the ranch off from the world. Declan came downstairs to find My Lin already in the kitchen. She had found the flour and was making a flatbread on the skillet. The smell was different from his usual fare, simpler, but comforting. I hope you do not mind, she said, wiping flour from her hands. I cannot sit idle while you shelter us. I don't mind, Declan grunted. He poured coffee. Storm's breaking. I'll ride out and check on your wagon later. Mr. Thorne, My Lin said, turning to face him. Why did you open the door? You looked angry when you first saw us. I was, Declan admitted. I was angry at the world. Angry at the interruption. But you let us in. I heard the little one crying, he said, looking into his cup. My boy, Toby. He used to cry like that when the thunder got too loud. I couldn't leave a child in the snow. The girls came down then. Jade was still guarded, Pearl was shy, but Ruby ran to him. Mr. Giant. Look. She held up a wooden soldier she had found in the boys' room. Declan stiffened. It was Toby's favorite toy. Ruby, put that back, My Lin said sharply, seeing Declan's face. No, Declan said, his voice straining. Let her play. A toy ain't no good gathering dust. Over the next 2 days, a rhythm established itself. My Lin insisted on helping with the chores. When Declan went to the barn to check the livestock, she followed, donning an oversized coat he lent her. She moved among the horses with a confidence that surprised him. My father worked the stables for the railroad barons in California, she explained as she expertly checked a mare's hoof. I grew up smelling like hay and horse liniment. You're good with them, Declan noted. I had to be. It was the only time people didn't look at me like I was different. She paused, stroking the mare's nose. My husband, Wei, he was a scholar in China. Here, he laid track until his back gave out. We tried to build a life, a farm. But when he died, his brother. He took it all. His brother. My Lin's face hardened. Harlan. He has a business in town. He said a woman could not run a farm alone. He said the debts Wei left were too high. He took the deed, the house, everything. He told us to leave. Family did that. Declan spat, pitching hay with renewed vigor. Harlan has forgotten what family means. He wants only to be powerful in this new world. He sees us as baggage. Declan thought of the outlaws who had killed his family. Men who took what they wanted because they could. There's a lot of evil men out here, my Lin. But not everyone. Inside the house, Jade sat reading one of Sarah's old books. She watched Declan whenever he came in, her eyes narrowing. Finally, on the fourth evening, she confronted him while he was stoking the fire. You were a marshal, she said. It wasn't a question. Declan turned. Who told you that? I found a badge in the drawer. And a picture. You and other men with guns. That was a long time ago. Why did you stop? Jade asked, her voice challenging. If you were a hero, why are you hiding here? I ain't a hero, kid. I was a man doing a job. And the job followed me home. He poked the fire aggressively. The men I hunted decided to hunt me back. They waited until I was gone on a patrol. Came here. Found my wife and sons instead. Jade went silent. The defiance drained out of her, replaced by a somber understanding. That's why you live alone. That's why. My Uncle Harlan, Jade said quietly, he says weak people deserve what they get. He said Papa was weak for dying. He said we were weak for crying. Declan stood up, towering over the girl. Your uncle is a fool. It takes a hell of a lot more strength to keep going when your whole world burns down than it does to steal from a widow. He placed a heavy hand on her shoulder. You're keeping your sisters safe. That makes you stronger than he'll ever be. For the first time, Jade smiled, a small, tentative thing. The peace was shattered the next morning. The snow had cleared enough for travel, and a rider appeared on the ridge. Declan recognized the horse. It was Sheriff Miller. He met the lawman on the porch. Tom. Declan the sheriff tipped his hat, his breath steaming in the air. See, you got company. Smoke from the chimney gave it away. Just passing through. Wagon broke down. Miller shifted in his saddle. There's a man in town, Declan. Name of Harlan Gua. Says he's looking for his sister-in-law and nieces. Says they stole property from him. Declan crossed his arms. They didn't steal nothing but the clothes on their backs. He claims the youngest girl, Ruby, is carrying a locket. Says it's a family heirloom worth a fortune. But that ain't the real reason, Declan. I did some digging. That farm my Lin's husband had? Railroad just decided they need that land for a new spur. It's worth thousands. But the deed. It was left in trust to the children. Declan swore under his breath. So he needs the girls to sell the land. He needs guardianship, Miller corrected. He's got a lawyer with him. He's coming out here, Declan. He knows they're here. He's claiming my Lin is unfit, says she's endangering them by dragging them through winter. He's going to take those kids. Over my dead body. Don't start a war, Declan. You know I can't stop a court order. If he has papers saying he's the guardian, I have to enforce it. Miller turned his horse. I bought you an hour. He's slow in the snow, but he's coming. Declan walked back inside. My Lin was pale, she had heard through the door. He is coming for them, she whispered. He will separate us. he will send me away and put them in an orphanage once he has the land. No, Declan said. He won't. You cannot stop him. He has the law. The law implies he's the closest male relative, Declan said, his mind racing. He looked at the girls. Ruby was playing with a wooden soldier. Pearl was braiding a ribbon. Jade was watching him, terrified. He looked at Mai Lin. She was a survivor. She was kind. And in the last week, she had brought life back to a place he thought was dead forever. Marry me, Declan said. Mai Lin stared at him. What? If we're married, I'm their stepfather. I'm a male guardian. I have a ranch, a steady income, and a reputation in this territory, good or bad, folks know me. No judge in this county will hand kids over to an uncle from the city if they're living in a stable home with a former U.S. Marshal. Declan, she stammered. We do not know each other. You cannot do this. It is a burden. It ain't a burden, he said roughly. He stepped closer, taking her rough, work-worn hands in his. Mai Lin, look around. Before you knocked, this house was a tomb. I was just waiting to die in it. You and the girls. You woke me up. I can protect you. I want to protect you. But love. We have respect, Declan said. We have survival. Love. Maybe that comes later. Or maybe friendship is enough. But I won't let him take those girls. Mai Lin searched his face. She saw the scars of his past, but also the fierce determination in his eyes. She looked at her daughters. Okay, she whispered. Yes. Get the girls dressed, Declan ordered. We don't have time for fancy. An hour later, a black carriage trudged through the snow, flanked by 2 hired gunmen. Harlan Gwa stepped out. He was a man in a fine wool coat, his face smooth and unweathered, his eyes cold and calculating. Mr. Thorne, Harlan called out, walking up the steps. I believe you are harboring fugitives. Declan stood on the porch, his hand resting near the Colt on his hip, a gun he hadn't worn in years. I'm hosting my family, Harlan. Turn around. Harlan laughed, a dry, humorless sound. Family? These are my brother's vagabond children and his thief of a wife. I have the papers right here. He waved a document. Custody order. Hand them over, or the sheriff will arrest you for kidnapping. Sheriff Miller rode up then, looking weary. Harlan, keep it civil. I am being civil, Sheriff. I want my nieces. The door opened. Mai Lin stepped out, holding Ruby. Jade and Pearl stood beside her. Mai Lin wore a blue dress that had belonged to Sarah. It was slightly too big, but she looked regal, her chin held high. You have no business here, Harlan, Mai Lin said clearly. Mai Lin, Harlan sneered. Look at you. Living in a shack with a white savage. Give me the children. You have clearly lost your mind. She ain't going nowhere, Declan said, stepping between them. And neither are my daughters. Your daughters? Harlan scoffed. Since when? Since about 10 minutes ago, a voice called out. Reverend Banks stepped out from the hallway behind Mai Lin, clutching a Bible. He was an old friend of Declan's who had ridden out with the sheriff. I just performed the ceremony. In the eyes of God and the Montana Territory, Declan Thorne and Mai Lin are man and wife. Harlan's face turned a violent shade of red. This is a sham. A trick. It's legal, Sheriff Miller said, cracking a small smile. I witnessed it. Declan here is the legal stepfather. And seeing as he owns this ranch and has standing in this community, I reckon his claim supersedes a temporary order from a city judge who didn't know the situation. I'll fight this. Harlan screamed. I'll drag you to court. I want that land. So it is about the land, Declan said, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. He stepped off the porch, walking slowly toward Harlan. The hired gunman twitched, but they saw the look in the ex-marshal's eyes and the way his hand hovered over his gun. They didn't move. Declan stopped inches from Harlan. "You want to fight? Let's fight. But know this, I hunted men who ate guys like you for breakfast. You come near my wife or my children again, and I won't hide behind a badge. I'll bury you on the prairie." Harlan looked at the sheriff, then at the gunmen who were backing away, and finally at Mai Lin, who looked at him with nothing but pity. "You're a fool, Mai Lin," Harlan spat. "He'll tire of you." "Go," Mai Lin said. "And do not return." Harlan retreated to his carriage, defeated by the wall of snow and steel that was Declan Thorne. As the carriage rolled away, the tension on the porch snapped. Jade let out a whoop of joy. Pearl hugged her mother's legs. Ruby ran to Declan, wrapping her arms around his knee. "Papa Giant made the bad man go away." Declan looked down at her, then at Mai Lin. They stood in the cold, breath mingling in the air. "Well," Declan said, rubbing the back of his neck. "That's done." "Husband," Mai Lin said, testing the word. A small smile played on her lips. "Thank you." That evening, the Christmas dinner was finally served. The table was fully set, 5 plates, 5 chairs. The house was filled with the smell of roasting meat and the sound of children's laughter. Declan sat at the head of the table. He looked at Jade, who was helping Pearl cut her meat. He looked at Ruby, who was feeding scraps to the imaginary dog under the table. He looked at Mai Lin, whose eyes shone with a mixture of relief and hope. "We should say grace," Mai Lin said softly. Declan cleared his throat. He reached out and took Mai Lin's hand. She took Jade's. The circle closed. "Lord," Declan began, his voice thick with emotion. "I haven't said much to you in a long time. But tonight I'm thankful. Thankful for the storm. Thankful for the knock on the door." He looked at his new wife. "And thankful that even in the dead of winter, things can still grow." "Amen," they chorused. After dinner, Declan went to the mantelpiece. He picked up the small box he had kept there for years. He called Mai Lin over to the fire. "I don't have a ring for you," he said. "Not a new one." But he opened the box. Inside was a simple gold band. "This was my mother's. Sarah wore it, but she'd want it to be used. She'd want this house to be a home again." Mai Lin held out her hand. Her fingers were calloused from work, scarred from the cold. Declan slid the ring onto her finger. It fit. "I will wear it with honor," she whispered. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, intricately carved jade pendant on a leather cord. "I have no ring for you. But this was my father's. It is for protection. For the guardian of the family." She placed it around Declan's neck. It settled against his chest, warm and heavy. Ruby yawned from the rug where she was playing. "Papa Cowboy," she murmured, sleepy. "Can you tell us a story?" Declan Thorne sat down in his armchair, the one that had been empty for so long. He pulled Ruby into his lap, while Jade and Pearl gathered around his feet. Mai Lin sat on the arm of the chair, her hand resting on his shoulder. "Sure, little miss," Declan said, a genuine smile breaking across his face for the first time in 6 years. Once upon a time, there was a rancher who thought he was all alone. But then, on Christmas Eve, 3 angels knocked on his door. Outside, the snow stopped falling, leaving the world white and clean and new.